Hi, my name's Don Latarski, and welcome to the third installment of Guitar Theory Illustrated, where we're checking out some of the music theory concepts that are going to help you become a much better guitarist and a better communicator with other musicians as well. The first couple lessons we spent looking at different intervals, different ways of organizing things on the fingerboard. We're going to carry on with that in the third lesson. Just a quick recap, we talked about major second intervals and the shapes that go along with those on the fingerboard. There are three different shapes. There's what I call a linear shape, which is really basically a whole step. This stays the same as we move it across the fingerboard from one string to another. Nothing changes there. But it's also possible to have a major second interval that looks like this. If we take this note and we want to put it on string 5, we go over 1 and then up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's also a shape that works really well for the major second interval. Now, when we take this shape and we move it across to the various string groups, it stays the same until we get to strings 3 and 2. And because of the slight difference in tuning between strings 2 and 3, we have to make an alteration to the shape. So it actually changes just a little bit. That's the third shape for the major second interval. Let's quickly review the major third interval, and then we're going to move on. So there's a major third, the linear shape on one string. Again, it stays the same all the way across. Yeah, let's move this over and get it on string 5. So over 1 and then 5 jumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like a board game. So there's a major third shape between strings 5 and 6. It stays the same between strings 5 and 4, between 4 and 3, and as you might expect, between 3 and 2, it's going to shift. Notice that the note moves up 1 fret, so it's straight across. Those are the three shapes for the major third interval. The major third interval is a really important one because that defines sort of what we think of as that upbeat, kind of happy, sort of carefree type sound in all major chords. It's actually in dominant chords, and it's in a lot of the scales that you're going to learn too as you go along if you follow through in this series. The next interval that we want to learn is just a half step above the major third, and I'm going to jump back over here. You can take a look. It's the interval between the root note of the scale and the fourth scale degree. It's our first interval that's called perfect. Perfect fourth. Let's move it over here. There's the linear form, which is getting pretty stretchy for most people. Move it over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's a straight across shape. And again, that stays the same all the way across until we hit 3 and 2, and then it switches shapes. So those two shapes, the straight across one and this diagonal one, are probably, for most purposes, that's all you really need for the perfect fourth. Perfect fourth sound is pretty interesting. You know, it's like this. Sort of that Chuck Berry type. Pretty important sound. Let's go up to the next one, which is the fifth. And I'm not even going to put it in its linear form because it's really not that useful since you can't play it. The fifth is a whole step above the fourth in the scale, right? Remember, in the major scale, there's a whole step between 4 and 5. So here it is. And most of you would recognize that right away. It's what most people call a power chord, even though it's technically not a chord. It's just an interval. Or in a more technical way of describing, it's called a dyad, which is really just another name for an interval. But anyway, it's a power chord. Pretty common sound, pretty easy to play. Let's see what happens to it when we move it across. Stays the same, but we're back to 3 and 2, and it has to expand a little bit further apart. When we get back to 2 and 1, it resumes the same shapes, like that, the one we started with. So that's only two different forms for the perfect fifth interval. there are two more that we can actually play. So I'm going to put this at the fifth. And let's see here. There it is there. I'm going to take this note and put it on string 4. So I'll leave this one here, move over 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, excuse me, 5. And there is another shape that is playable for the perfect fifth. In this particular shape, I would recommend that you think about it in terms of the G octave shape. See that? It's basically out of the G octave shape. There's the G octave shape. And there's the fifth. Once in a while, we're going to need that. So let's see what happens to that when we slide it across the fingerboard. And it's going to change. So this is the third form of the perfect fifth. As soon as string 2 gets involved with this, we have to make a change. So there it is right there. There's the perfect fifth between strings 2 and 4. So we're skipping a string in the middle. Now, here's an unusual thing. When we slide it across again, because string 2 is actually in between, that shape stays the same. That's probably a good place to stop for today, because now you've got shapes to memorize and to get into your ear by singing, right? And also into your fingers. When you get that in your fingers, what I like to think of is that you're creating a type of a knowledge which I call touch. So you've got, your hand becomes comfortable going into those shapes. And your ear then recognizes those shapes and is able to put a name on them. Major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth. Our next lesson will deal with major sixth and major seventh, and that'll take care of the major scale intervals. We can then go on to build our major scales in the C, A, G, E, D forms. So thanks for joining me today. We'll see you again here soon.